Welcome, Wargamers, to the super cuddly and equally feral corners of Aya, because today we are talking about one of the newest units to grace Para-Bellum's website, the Werewargs. If I could give a simplified sales pitch for this, the words Viking, werewolf, alien test subjects come to mind, and if that does not tap a single pleasure center of your brain, I'm going to go ahead and ask that you click out, because quite frankly, there's nothing else on this channel here for you. One of those words has to do it. And so today we're going to talk all about the dark origins of the Werewargs, both in the mythology within the Nord culture and the horrific historical truth, alongside practical chats like why aren't there more of them, how does shape-shifting work in Conquest, and so on. Now, one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you're watching this video and you're interested in jumping into Conquest, first of all, welcome. Please consider using that affiliate link in my description down below. You'll save 10% on all your purchases, and every single time you do, it throws a tip in my tip jar and goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel, and I could not be more thankful for each and every one of you. In addition, if you're looking for some tactical advice, they are kickstarting a section for Conquest over on Goonhammer. Go check them out. Now, for those of you who are new to Conquest or the Nords as a faction, I did a series a while back, and I'll link to the playlist for that down below, where we dissected the worldview of the Nords. They seem to have a real-world Norse mythology, complete with names and terms that you and I would recognize, right? Loki, Thor, Einherr Varar, all these things. In truth, this was actually a direct contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence, the descendants of whom some of them we would know as the Spire, another faction within the game. This particular Spire went up to the cold norths of Aya and began several projects to take the primitive local fauna, meaning humans, and elevate them genetically to function as natural bodyguards. This is a thing the Spire did throughout Aya's history, is they would go to an area and kind of tinker with things genetically. They can alter organic materials to kind of create drones, machines, weapons of war, whatever they need done. They are scientists and pioneers by nature. And the idea is this: well, why don't we just come here, set up shop, we'll make a natural perimeter to keep things away that we don't like, and this way we'll just kind of be left in peace to do our research and our studies. Now, the plan for the humans here was to elevate them genetically to function as natural bodyguards. The idea being that they will revere the Spire, but stay away from it and basically live around it, worshipping it religiously and making sure that nobody else gets too close. To make this even better, these were going to be like superhumans who can raise up entire armies and fight with them. And things seem to have gone pretty well. I'm sure this was a project that was many generations in the making, but the problem is that when one of these big days of battle came, no one woke the super soldiers up. These, genetically mastercrafted humans, metahumans, I guess they are, called the Einherr Varar, stayed in their little stasis pods below the ground. That spire was burned and destroyed, and the human survivors were scattered and ignored. This all matters because what we collectively call the Nords are a largely nomadic tribal society that's the direct offspring of those test subjects, survivors, and refugees of that incident, complete with all of the, I'm going to say, work-in-progress flaws that you would expect from complex gene editing operations. Basically, the Spire made aberrant horrors, human-like things that are monsters to behold. And this is where we get regiments like the Ogre or the Troll Bloods, who feasted on mutated blood, all of these hiccups, quote-unquote, of the genetic meddling of the Spire. But since a lot of these hiccups are seen as exceedingly useful for their strength, speed, resilience, whatever it might be, and because they are generally the most direct descendants of those forefathers of myth, they're kind of elevated. Not like respected as equals per se, like ogres are still dumb, but they're seen as living proof of the legends of their people. And right there, that fundamental proof idea, that is the core idea of today's subject, coming back to the Werewargs. At its most basic, if you had to just say it really simply, These are the Nords who can become werewolves. It makes them exceptional light infantry, but very, very hard to control. And honestly, as far as the description goes, you could stop there and it'll do what it says on the box. It's a bunch of werewolves. But like most things Para-Bellum, it's when you go a step deeper into the lore that these things become really unique, because I love the way that they take, existing tropes and just kind of make a refreshing story upon them. And so this is where we get into the different perspectives of what's happening with Werewargs. There's the Nord side, which is using their mythology as a lens to explain what they're seeing. And then there's the truth. So from like a historical perspective. And so let's tackle these, one at a time. Starting with the Nords, of course, because that's the fun perspective. From their POV, as it were, these are ordinary members of their clan, their tribe, their warband, who at some point, either in battle or in hunting, are bitten by a warg. This is just a Norse term for a wolf. Should they survive, they're changed, although they don't know it. And that's an important thing about this. If you're bitten by a warg and you survive, you don't know if what happens next is going to happen to you. At the next battle, that person you've known forever, the moment they get up to the battle line and start getting, ready to fight, imagine they burst into werewolf mode. And really, this is the idea. It's seen as a direct blessing of a character known as Einherr Varar. And this is one of those Spire super soldiers that I mentioned before. Very few of those actually panned out, and sometimes they will awaken from their stasis randomly. But this particular, demigod that was created back in the day was able to shapeshift, which is, of course, naturally why they associate shapeshifting powers with him. Now, Varar is no longer with us, but his blessing lives on in his chosen warriors kind of thing. And these werewargs, I should say, exist to run up and be the feral spirit of the Nords made manifest, ripping dudes up. At the end of the battle, they do turn back to humans. It seems like adrenaline is the trigger for the shifting, and what the Nords notice is that this change back and forth wears them out terribly. So they need to rest and recover a lot between battles. That being said, they are a highly respected vanguard force, seen as a direct manifestation of the mythology of the Nords. So ordinary dude named Jerry, who you've known your whole life, at some point just pre-battle explodes into a hairy werewarg and then just goes absolutely feral on the enemy. And everyone around him who's known Jerry their whole lives is like, must have been blessed by Varar. And then everyone just kind of nods and is like, yeah, that must be it. Now, here's the funny thing is that they almost have it, right? They're so close. One thing up top, it's important to note, and to my knowledge, Einherr Varar is long gone. At least they haven't mentioned him anywhere else that I could find. If you know of one and I missed it, please let me know in the comments down below. But he was a person, he was one of these super soldiers, did have the ability to shapeshift, and he did have a ton of progeny that have long since intermingled with the various warbands and tribes. I'm assuming this happened a long time ago, so that there's lore reasons why Werewargs can exist in any tribe or whatever. So like, time for his family lineage to spread out, I mean. So his bloodline exists, spreads wide, and in my mind this also could include the refugees who were actively being experimented on to make Einherr Varar. The idea being like as they escaped, they had no idea what changes they were carrying within them. Regardless, Varar was the Spire project into body morphing, making these humans into greater defenders, only changing when attacked, and then they become much more than base humans, changing back after the battle is completed, which honestly, if you're looking for a defense system, is pretty clever. We don't have to worry about these humans having too much power all the time. They're not always in super mode, just when their lands are being impeded upon or they're attacked or something like that. And then they go back to human. That's perfect. But presumably, when Varar, the character, had kids, they were not able to shapeshift like him. In fact, when I think about the headcanon of why every, tribe or warband or whatever might have werewargs, it might be that he had a ton of progeny just trying to see if he could find someone who could give him an heir with his abilities. That actually holds up quite a bit in my mind. But he has a bunch of kids, and he essentially thinks all his genes are gone. They're not being passed on. But what he does not know is that they actually are. You see, the Spire's gene editing wasn't to raise humans with this ability to shapeshift. It was designed to be an intentional process to keep the werewolf population from getting too big. Meaning, nobody's born a werewolf. You are born human with a little secret locked door inside of your DNA that could be accessed to become a werewolf. When one of these Nords is bitten by a warg, a wolf, its DNA, I'm assuming from its saliva, acts as that key. It completes in whatever capacity this sequence, enabling that ability. My guess, really, my conjecture, is that the Spires back in the day were probably going to have a big to-do ritual where they honor warriors with the DNA to make them feel special for serving the Spire, and it's like an elevation type thing. But with that being gone, the only way to get it is by being either bitten by a wolf or having a direct kind of contact with its DNA in some capacity. I assume, scratches, bites, something like that. And I like that idea. But there's one more thing to mention here that's kind of built into their story, is that I mentioned from the Nord perspective that when they shift and shift back, their bodies get wrecked. They're super tired. Well, yes, they turn into werewolves when the fighting starts, and yes, if the fighting ends, they turn back. The problem is that somewhere in the middle area, where battles go on for a little too long. At the end of the day, none of these Spire projects were perfect, and the drawback or defect here has to do with metabolism. The longer that they are in wolf form, the rate at which the body cannibalizes itself increases, meaning they burn themselves up in battle. Not just that, they lose their minds as well, right? Because as the desperate need to replenish calories takes over, it becomes automatic. You kind of go back to your lizard brain where you're just like, I need food, I need water, I need to replenish. And so it becomes automatic for you to try and restore yourself. And if you can't, some of these will just collapse on the battlefield if they've gone too long and can't restore. Which I like, because in that way it's not just the blessings or whatever. There's a curse aspect to it of like, there's a part of this where you have to be in control as much as you can, and when you unleash the Werewargs, they better finish what they're doing quick, otherwise you lose them. Now, in addition to the Werewargs, we also have a sweet command option for them known as the Vargir Lord. Now, the reference here is obvious, right? The Einherr Vargir is the one that they think is responsible for the ability to shapeshift, but what makes this character, or this upgrade unit for the Werewargs, stand out is that they do not lose their minds to the hunger. For them personally, they see it as a test of will of some kind, but some aspect of their DNA basically locks their frontal cortex into I'm still going to be in control. They don't lose it the same way that the others do. So having someone who thinks like a human and can rationalize and receive orders and give them, but also act as a werewolf or a wolf in the sense of, you know how the pack works, so you can command it as alpha, point them in a direction, how they communicate, and so on, is really useful. I'm not going to say he leads them so much as kind of just, guides them in a general direction, but it's the kind of thing where if you are someone with a level head in this pack of animals, you can either A, direct them away from the fight so they calm down and don't burn themselves out, or keep directing them further into the fight so that they're always feeding and always replenishing. It's just someone with a level head can make sure that they are either in the fight or not, being wherever they need to be. So why is this cool, right? Why would you want the Werewargs besides the coolest models ever? For me personally, I love consequences. Every time we get a new unit for the Nords, I feel like we get hot goss about the Spire as well, right? Just how uncaring they are about living things. These guys are, to me, important for a few reasons. Of course, they act as, the fast attack arm of the Nords. They exist to strike fear in the hearts of weaker beings who think that they can trespass on Nord land. But also, just like with the Ugr and the Troll Bloods, these are living examples that prove in their minds their mythology. And it's not just like in their minds of historical accuracy, like that our beliefs are historically validated, but that the gods are active and their blessings are possible to achieve, right? Starting as a man and becoming something more is wildly different to just thinking people are born differently. So seeing your buddy Jerry ascend to Werewarghood, as he's able to now slash and hack and basically acts as the coolest of all, makes you think that might happen to me someday. Even though, of course it's not. This is all genetic hiccups, but in their mind, from their context, they're not connecting the dots. And so to them, it's just this constant validation of their beliefs. Like all Para-Bellum stuff, I enjoy it because it reveals the depth of earnest belief in their mythology, in their minds, with evidence. And of course, the cold, hard, uncaring truth of the Spire, which means I feel like we get lore for 2 armies every single time we get a new Nord unit. I absolutely adore this. Let me know your thoughts all about the Werewargs down below, and what unit, or regiment rather, you would like covered next. Thank you all so much for hanging out and listening to me, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming!